The chandelier crystals stopped swaying when the boy appeared. 12 members of the Orlov Bratva, men and women who'd built an empire on violence and silence, went rigid in their seats as a 7-year-old in a thrift store suit stumbled through the velvet curtains. The staff assumed this was a lost child. The family members who'd spent the last hour mocking the dark-haired waitress knew better. This was exposure, and exposure gets people killed. But the waitress, Claire, didn't try to hide. She didn't grab the boy and run. Instead, she dropped to her knees as he crashed into her arms, sobbing a single word that detonated like a grenade in the private dining room. Mama. Conversations died mid-sentence. Leonid Orlov's wine glass hit the table. In that moment, everyone saw what she'd been protecting for 3 years. And the boy had his father's eyes, gray-green and unmistakable. And when his thin dress shirt pulled tight against his shoulder, the crescent moon birthmark that marked every Orlov for 6 generations. This wasn't just any waitress. She was the woman who'd vanished without explanation, and somehow, impossibly, she'd been hiding the one thing that could either destroy them all or change everything. The Imperium didn't just serve food, it buried secrets under white tablecloths and $30 cocktails. Table 6 needs their Bordeaux. Today, Claire, not next week. Martin, the floor manager, vibrated with the kind of anxiety that came from managing a restaurant where half the clientele had kill orders on the other half. His eyes kept darting toward the private room, the Versailles suite, where tonight's reservation made even the owner twitchy. Orlov, party of 12. Claire Dawson balanced her tray with hands that had learned not to shake. 3 years of invisible work in restaurants like this. 3 years of believing Manhattan was big enough to stay hidden. The lie worked perfectly until her son appeared in the doorway. Claire's alarm went off at 4:47 a.m., which meant she'd gotten 4 hours of sleep. Better than Tuesday, worse than she needed. The basement apartment in Astoria had exactly one window, positioned at street level, so the first thing she saw every morning was someone's sneakers walking past. Today it was a jogger in expensive Nikes that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. She watched the feet disappear, then rolled out of bed before the second alarm could wake Milo. The kitchenette was 3 steps from her mattress, bathroom another 4 steps in the opposite direction. Milo's room, and she used that word generously for what was essentially a converted storage closet, was just big enough for a twin bed and a plastic dresser from IKEA. But it had a door that closed and a nightlight shaped like a rocket ship, and that made it his. She moved quietly, muscle memory guiding her through the morning routine. Coffee in the ancient Mr. Coffee machine her neighbor had given her when his wife upgraded. Shower in 3 minutes flat because the hot water lasted exactly 7, and Milo would need the rest for his bath tonight. Hair pulled back, wet. Uniform number 1, black pants, white shirt, comfortable shoes that looked professional enough for Café Luxe's breakfast shift. The coffee tasted like burnt rubber, but it was hot and caffeinated, which made it perfect. Milo was still asleep when she checked on him, one arm thrown over his head, his secondhand Spider-Man sheets tangled around his legs. 7 years old last month, or growing so fast she'd had to buy new sneakers twice this year. And even those came from the clearance rack at Payless. And he had her dark hair, her mouth, but those eyes, gray-green and sharp even in sleep, those came from somewhere else, from someone else. She didn't let herself think about that most mornings. Her phone buzzed. text from Sandra, her neighbor who watched Milo before and after school for $20 a day and left over whatever Claire could bring home from whichever restaurant hadn't fired her yet. Running late. School drop-off okay, but can't do pickup, sorry, hun. Claire closed her eyes and did the math she'd already done 1,000 times. Cafe Lux until 2. 30-minute subway ride to the Imperium for the dinner prep shift at 3. Work until close, probably 11 if they were busy. She could ask Patricia to grab Milo from school, but Patricia had done it twice last week and Claire was already out of favors. She'd figure it out. She always did. By 6 a.m., she'd kissed Milo's forehead, left cereal and a banana on the counter with a note reminding him to brush his teeth, and locked the 3 deadbolts on their door. The subway platform smelled like urine and electrical fire. She stood away from the edge, earbuds in but no music playing, just the white noise of the city waking up around her. Somewhere in Manhattan, Leonid Orlov was probably sleeping in 1,000-thread count sheets. Somewhere in this city, the father of her child lived a life so far removed from hers, they might as well exist in different countries. That distance had kept them safe for 3 years. Claire had no idea she'd be serving him dinner in 13 hours. The Imperium's kitchen smelled like burned money, truffle oil, gold leaf, and the kind of desperation that came from charging $200 for a steak. Claire had been polishing wine glasses for 20 minutes when Martin grabbed her elbow. Versailles Suite, party of 12, VIP service, which means you smile, you pour, you vanish, got it? She nodded, already reaching for the pressed apron they reserved for private dining. VIP meant better tips if she was lucky, or nothing at all if they were the kind of rich that forgot service workers were human. "What's the name?" she asked, tying the apron strings. Martin's face did something complicated. "Just be professional. More professional than usual." Which told her exactly nothing and everything at once. Made the Versailles suite lived up to its pretentious name. Velvet curtains the color of old blood, a table that could seat 20. Lighting designed to make everyone look like they belonged in an oil painting. The guests were already filtering in when she arrived with the first round of water. Expensive suits, jewelry that didn't sparkle so much as glow with quiet wealth. The kind of people who made you feel poor just by existing in their proximity. She was pouring the 3rd glass when he walked in. Time did a strange stutter step. Her hands kept moving, muscle memory, survival instinct, but her brain went somewhere else entirely. Somewhere that remembered those eyes, that mouth, the way he moved like violence wrapped in expensive tailoring. Leonid Orlov had aged, not badly, just differently. Sharper, harder. Before 3 years had stripped away whatever softness he'd pretended to have when they'd met, when she'd been stupid enough to believe a man like him could want something other than possession. His eyes swept the room and passed over her like she was wallpaper. She should have felt relief. Instead, something in her chest cracked. "Water," his mother said in Russian, not looking up from her menu. "And try not to spill. These linens cost more than your monthly salary." The man beside her, uncle maybe based on the family resemblance, laughed. "Does this one even speak English? They keep hiring these immigrant girls who can barely—" "I speak English," Claire said quietly, setting down the water pitcher with hands that absolutely could not shake. "Would you like to hear the specials?" The old woman's eyes finally found her. Evaluated her, dismissed her. "Just bring bread and tell the kitchen we don't have all night." Claire nodded. backing toward the curtain, her pulse hammering in her ears. Leonid was talking to someone at the far end of the table, gesturing with one hand, completely unaware that the woman pouring his water was the same one who'd disappeared from his bed 3 years ago, carrying his child. She made it to the kitchen before her hands started shaking. 4 hours. She just needed to survive 4 hours. The dinner was in its third course when Claire's phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She ignored it. Staff weren't supposed to check phones during service, but it buzzed again. And again. She ducked into the hallway near the kitchen, pulling it out with hands still trembling from the last round of wine service. 6 texts from Sandra, emergency, Dave fell, ambulance. Can't watch M, bringing him to you, almost there. So sorry. Claire's vision tunneled. No, not tonight. Any night but tonight. She texted back with shaking fingers. Can't. Working. Find Patricia. The response came immediately. Already left. He's scared. 5 minutes away. The phone nearly slipped from her grip. She looked toward the Versailles suite where Leonid's mother was probably already complaining about the temperature of her soup, and then toward the front entrance where her son would appear any minute, and the impossibility of the situation crashed over her like cold water. Martin found her first. Claire, table needs, why do you look like you're about to pass out? I need 5 minutes, please, my son. Your son? His voice pitched up. You can't have a kid here during... But Sandra was already pushing through the entrance, Milo's hand gripped tight in hers, the older woman's face pale and frightened. I'm so sorry, honey. Dave's at Mount Sinai. I have to go, they said possible stroke. Milo's eyes were red-rimmed, his little suit, the one she'd dressed him in this morning for school photos, wrinkled and wrong in this space of crystal and wealth. He looked so small. Mama? His voice cracked. Claire moved on instinct, kneeling down, pulling him close. Baby, it's okay. Mr. Dave is going to be fine, and you're going to wait in the break room with... Table 6 wants their check, someone yelled from the kitchen. Milo flinched at the noise. His grip on her shirt tightened. Come on, Claire whispered, trying to stand, trying to guide him toward the back hallway. But Milo was 7 and scared, and didn't understand why his mother was trying to hide him. He pulled away, started walking toward the sound of voices and silverware because that's where she kept disappearing to, and if he could just see where she was going. Milo, wait. But he was already pushing through the velvet curtains. The Versailles suite went silent in stages. First the people nearest the entrance, then the ones who turned to see what had interrupted the conversation. Finally, Leonid himself, mid-sentence, and his eyes landing on the small boy in the ill-fitting suit standing in the doorway like he'd materialized from thin air. Milo's face crumpled. He didn't understand the stares, didn't understand anything except that his mother was somewhere in this room, and he needed her. Mama! He ran, not toward the exit, toward Claire, who'd frozen in the doorway behind him, and when he crashed into her legs, sobbing, turning his face up toward hers, those eyes caught the chandelier light. Gray-green, unmistakable. Leonid stood slowly. The color drained from his face. The other diners cleared out fast once Leonid made a single gesture. His family stayed, circling like sharks, their eyes moving between Claire, Milo, and the man who'd gone absolutely still at the head of the table. Martin tried to intervene. Sir, I apologize for the disruption. We'll handle... Leave. Leonid's voice was quiet, terrible in its quietness. Martin left. Claire kept Milo pressed against her side, her hand cupped over his head like she could somehow make him invisible again. His tears had soaked through her shirt. He didn't understand why everyone was staring, why his mama's hands were shaking. Claire. Leonid said her name like he was testing it, like he couldn't quite believe it was real. Claire Dawson. She forced herself to meet his eyes, worse than she'd imagined. He looked gutted, furious, and confused in a way that made him dangerous. How old is he? Her throat closed. She managed. 7. 7. He repeated it, did math that any fool could do. His jaw worked. You were pregnant when you disappeared. Not a question. She didn't answer anyway. His mother stood, her chair scraping back. Leonid, this is clearly some kind of... Sit down, Mama. Still quiet. Still terrible. Galina sat. Everyone out, Leonid said, except her. Absolutely not. His Uncle Victor started. You don't know what... Out! They filed out slowly, resentfully. His mother lingered longest, her eyes on Milo with an expression Claire couldn't read. Then it was just the three of them in a room that suddenly felt very small. Leonid moved closer, not threatening but not safe either. Milo pressed harder against Claire's leg. Why? One word, tried an entire accusation. Claire's laugh came out broken. Why did I leave? Are you serious? You were pregnant with my child and I watched you kill a man. The words ripped out of her. In your office. I came to surprise you and I watched you put a bullet in someone's head like it was nothing. Like it was Tuesday. His face didn't change. He was a traitor. He was a person. Her voice cracked. Milo whimpered and she forced herself quieter. I was 23 and pregnant and I realized I didn't know you at all. I couldn't. She looked down at Milo, who'd finally stopped crying, his face pressed against her stomach. I couldn't raise a baby in your world. So you chose this? Leonid gestured around the restaurant. 3 jobs? 3 basement apartment in Queens that I found in exactly 45 minutes of searching? Her blood went cold. You knew where I was? I've always known where you were, Claire. I let you stay hidden because... He stopped, breathed carefully. Because I thought you'd left for someone else, for something normal. His eyes dropped to Milo. Not because you were carrying my son. The silence stretched too long. He has my eyes, Leonid said finally, his voice strange. He has the mark. I know. You kept him from me for 7 years. I kept him safe for 7 years. Claire left the Imperium at midnight, with Milo asleep against her shoulder, and Leonid's business card burning a hole in her pocket. He'd written an address on the back in sharp, angry handwriting. For when you stop being stubborn, he'd said. She'd thrown it in the trash on her way out. Retrieved it 2 blocks later because she wasn't stupid, just desperate. The subway ride back to Queens took 40 minutes. Milo woke up once, confused and cranky, asking why they were going home so late. She told him Mr. Dave had an emergency and left it at that. 7-year-olds didn't need to know their entire lives had just detonated. Their building looked the same as always. Peeling paint, broken intercom. The smell of someone's dinner lingering in the stairwell. Home. Shabby and small and safe because nobody important knew they existed here. Except Leonid had known. For how long? Years. Had he been watching her struggle, watching her work herself to exhaustion, and just let her? She unlocked the 3 deadbolts with shaking hands. The apartment was wrong immediately. Not obviously. Nothing smashed, nothing stolen, just moved. The kind of disturbance you only noticed if you lived somewhere so small you knew exactly where every object belonged. Someone had been inside. Claire's heart kicked into overdrive. She set Milo down carefully, whispered for him to stay by the door, and moved through the apartment on legs that didn't feel steady. Kitchen. Drawer pulled out half an inch. Bathroom, medicine cabinet not quite closed. Her bedroom. Mattress shifted slightly off the frame. Nothing taken, just a message. We know where you live. She found the note on Milo's bed, and plain white paper, block letters written in Sharpie. Pretty boy. Shame if something happened. Her hands were still shaking when the first brick came through the window. She had maybe 2 seconds of confusion before the smell hit her. Gasoline, sharp and wrong, and then the apartment was burning, just like that. No warning, no time to think, just fire eating across her kitchen floor like something alive. Milo. She grabbed him, already moving toward the door. Smoke alarm screaming. Someone yelling in Russian from the street below. Her hands fumbled the deadbolts. Too many. Why had she installed so many? And then they were out, running down the stairs, while behind them the only home her son had ever known turned into an inferno. The street was chaos. Neighbors streaming out of the building. Someone had called 911. Sirens wailed in the distance. Milo clung to her neck, crying now, his small body shaking against hers. Claire stood on the sidewalk in her work uniform, her son in her arms, and watched everything she'd built burn. Her phone rang. She already knew who it was before she answered. Claire. Leonid's voice was rough, urgent. I just got word. The Volkovs, how did they know? Her voice came out flat, dead. How did they find out about him so fast? My family talks. Their family listens. A pause. Where are you? She looked at the flames, at Milo's terrified face, at the collection of neighbors who were very carefully not making eye contact because getting involved in bratva business was a death sentence. Give me the address, she said quietly. Claire. Just give me the fucking address, Leonid. He did. The black SUV arrived 18 minutes later. 2 men in suits who didn't speak, just opened the door and waited. Claire climbed in with Milo still attached to her, his face buried in her neck, and watched her old life disappear in the rearview mirror. The Orlov estate sat behind gates that probably cost more than her entire building. Stone walls, security cameras, men with guns who nodded respectfully as the SUV passed. Milo had finally stopped crying. He stared out the window at the massive house with something like fear on his face. Mama, he whispered. Where are we? Claire pressed her cheek against his hair and lied. Somewhere safe. Milo didn't speak for the first 2 days. He moved through the guest suite like a ghost. Too quiet, too careful, touching nothing without permission. Claire watched him shrink into himself and wanted to burn the whole estate down just to get back to their basement apartment where at least he'd felt safe enough to laugh. Leonid tried. She'd give him that much. The third morning, he appeared at breakfast with a stuffed animal, some expensive thing from F.A.O. Schwartz, a lion with a silk mane. He set it next to Milo's untouched plate of eggs. I thought you might like this. Milo stared at the lion, then at Leonid, then at Claire with eyes that asked, is this a trap? What do you say? Claire prompted gently. Thank you. Barely a whisper. Leonid's face did something complicated. He pulled out a chair, sat down across from his son. Em and Claire saw him struggle with what to say to a 7-year-old who looked at him like he might explode. Do you like school? Leonid tried. Milo nodded. What's your favorite subject? Reading? That's good. Reading is important. A pause that stretched too long. I read a lot when I was your age. Milo said nothing, just pulled the lion closer, his small fingers gripping the mane. Claire was about to intervene when Victor walked in without knocking, already talking in rapid Russian about some shipment issue. His voice was loud, aggressive, the way men in this world spoke when they expected immediate obedience. Milo flinched so hard he knocked over his orange juice. The glass shattered. Juice spread across expensive hardwood. And Milo, her brave, quiet boy, looked at the mess with absolute terror on his face. It like he'd just committed an unforgivable crime. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" "It's fine." Leonid's voice came out too sharp. Not angry, but Milo didn't know the difference. The boy's eyes filled with tears. Victor was still talking, oblivious. Leonid cut him off with 2 words in Russian that made his uncle's face go stiff, then quieter. "Get out." "Leonid, this is important. I said get out." Victor left. The door closed with a soft click that somehow felt louder than slamming. Leonid looked at his son, who was shaking now, trying not to cry over spilled juice. Something shifted in his expression. He got down on the floor, this man who commanded an empire who people feared enough to set apartments on fire, and started picking up glass with his bare hands. "Accidents happen," he said quietly. "You're not in trouble, Milo. You'll never be in trouble for accidents." Milo watched him, confused. In their old life, Claire had cleaned up messes. Important people didn't kneel on floors. "Why do people bow to you?" Milo asked suddenly. Leonid's hands stilled. He looked at Claire, who offered no help, then back at his son. "Because I'm in charge of a lot of things." "Bad things?" The question hung in the air like smoke. "Sometimes," Leonid admitted, "but I'm trying to do better things now." Milo considered this with the seriousness only children could manage. "Because of me?" "Yes," Leonid said, "because of you." Galina Orlova waited exactly 1 week before cornering Claire alone. It happened in the library, a room Claire had been using to avoid the rest of the house. Milo was having his first tutoring session with the instructor Leonid had hired, and Claire had maybe 30 minutes of peace before her son would inevitably need rescuing from too much attention. She didn't hear Galina enter, just looked up from her book to find the older woman standing in the doorway like a portrait of controlled fury, diamonds glinting at her throat. "We should talk." Not a request. Claire marked her page and waited. Galina moved deeper into the room, each step deliberate. "You must think you're very clever." "I don't know what you mean." "Don't play stupid. It's insulting to us both." Galina's accent thickened with anger. "You disappear for 3 years. Let my son believe you're dead or worse, then conveniently reappear with a child who has Orlov eyes. You must have been so pleased when he walked into that restaurant." Claire's jaw tightened. "I didn't know he'd be there." "Of course you didn't." The sarcasm was acid. "And I suppose you also didn't know that revealing a hidden heir in front of witnesses would force his hand? That he'd have no choice but to claim the boy or look weak?" "I didn't. How much do you want?" The question landed like a slap. Claire stood slowly, the book forgotten. "Excuse me?" "Money. Isn't that what this is about? How much to disappear again? Name your price." Galina's eyes were chips of ice. "I've dealt with gold diggers before. They all have a number." Claire laughed, sharp and bitter. "You think I wanted this? And you think I wanted to serve your family dinner while you called me incompetent? You think I want to be trapped in this house while your people hunt everyone I've ever known? So you admit you're trapped? We're all trapped. Claire's voice rose. Your son, me, Milo, we're all trapped in this mess because I made the mistake of loving someone who kills people and calls it business. Silence crashed down between them. Galina's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. You loved him. Past tense. And yet you kept his child. I kept my child. Claire's hands were shaking. Milo is mine. I'm the one who stayed up all night when he had croup. I'm the one who worked 3 jobs so he could have new shoes, not Leonid. Me. So don't you dare stand there in your diamonds and tell me I'm using my son for money. Then what do you want? The question was quieter now, almost genuine. Claire sagged. I want Milo safe. That's all I've ever wanted. Galina studied her for a long moment, then unexpectedly, show me. What? Show me this fierce love you claim. Let me see how my grandson looks at you. They found Milo in the sunroom, struggling through a math worksheet while his tutor explained fractions. He looked up when Claire entered, and his entire face transformed. Relief, joy, home. He didn't run to her. He was getting better at this place, at not showing too much emotion. But his hand reached out automatically. She took it and he pressed against her side like he could absorb her presence through proximity. Mama, can we go to the garden after? You promised. After homework, Claire agreed. Milo groaned but smiled. And when Claire glanced back at Galina, the older woman's expression had shifted into something complicated. She was seeing, perhaps for the first time, that this wasn't a con. This was just a mother and son who'd had everything taken from them and were trying desperately to survive. Milo's 8th birthday fell on a Tuesday, which meant Claire had been living in the Orloff estate for exactly 6 weeks. Leonid insisted on a party, something small he promised, just family. Claire knew better than to believe him. The garden had been transformed into something from a children's fantasy. Balloon arches, a magician, a cake shaped like a dragon that probably cost more than her old monthly rent. Milo hated every minute of the attention, but loved the presents, which he opened with the careful precision of a child who'd spent most of his life making one toy last all year. Claire stood at the edge of the festivities, watching Leonid attempt to teach his son how to swing a plastic bat at a piñata when the first gunshot cracked through the air. The world tilted sideways. Leonid's security moved immediately, bodies forming walls, our guns appearing from shoulder holsters, but the Volkovs had planned this too well. They came from 3 directions at once, over the garden wall, through the side gate, even one emerging from the catering van that had delivered the cake. Claire didn't think. She ran toward Milo, who'd frozen in the middle of the lawn with the bat still in his hands, his face confused rather than scared because he didn't understand what gunfire sounded like. She hit him at full speed, taking them both down behind the dessert table as bullets tore through silk tablecloths and shattered champagne flutes. Milo screamed against her chest. She covered his head with both hands and tried to make herself a wall between him and the violence. Stay down, she hissed. Don't move, baby, don't move. A Volkov soldier rounded the table, gun raised. Claire didn't hesitate, grabbed a champagne bottle by the neck and swung hard. The glass connected with his temple and he dropped, and she was already moving, dragging Milo toward the hedge line while her hands shook and her mind went somewhere cold and distant. Foster care had taught her things, how to fight dirty, how to survive when bigger, stronger people wanted to hurt you, how to become something other than a victim. She'd spent 7 years trying to forget those lessons. They came back like muscle memory. Another soldier. This one saw her coming, tried to aim, but Claire was faster, swept his legs, used his own momentum to slam him into the stone fountain. His gun skittered across flagstones. She grabbed it without thinking, unchambered around the way Derek from her third foster home had taught her when she was 15, and stupid enough to think he was being helpful, rather than grooming her for his crew. Claire, Leonid's voice hoarse with something that might have been fear. She turned just as a third Volkov emerged from the smoke, weapon trained not on her but on Milo, who'd crawled out from behind the hedge despite her orders. Time crystallized. She saw Leonid moving, saw him put himself between the gun and their son, saw the moment of impact as the bullet meant for Milo caught him in the chest instead. He went down hard. Claire fired twice. Center mass the way you were supposed to. The Volkov dropped. Then she was running again, this time toward Leonid, who was bleeding onto expensive grass while Milo screamed, and security finally neutralized the last of the attackers. The waiting room at Mount Sinai's private wing smelled like industrial cleaner and fear. Claire sat with Milo curled in her lap, both of them still covered in grass stains and someone else's blood. Galina paced. Victor made phone calls in harsh Russian. The security team had formed a perimeter that the hospital staff had stopped questioning after the first hour. Milo hadn't spoken since they'd loaded Leonid into the ambulance. He just breathed against Claire's collarbone, his small hands gripping her shirt like she might disappear if he let go. He pushed me, Milo whispered finally. The bad man was going to shoot me and Papa pushed me. Claire closed her eyes. I know, baby. Is he going to die? No. She said it with more certainty than she felt. Maybe your father is too stubborn to die. The surgeon emerged 3 hours later looking exhausted but satisfied. He's stable. Bullet missed the heart by 2 centimeters. He's incredibly lucky. Galina made a sound that might have been a prayer or a curse. Can we see him? Claire asked me. Family only. She's family. Galina's voice cut through the room like a blade. She's the mother of his child. She goes in. The surgeon didn't argue. Leonid looked wrong in a hospital bed, too pale, too still, hooked up to machines that beeped his heartbeat into the quiet room. But his eyes opened when Claire approached, and something like relief crossed his face. Milo? Safe. Scared but safe. She stopped at the edge of the bed, suddenly unsure. You took a bullet for him. Of course I did. He said it like it was obvious, like there had never been any other option. You could have died. Better me than him. Leonid's hand moved slightly on the sheets, reaching. Better me than either of you. Claire took his hand before she could stop herself. His fingers closed around hers, warm despite everything. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For the man you saw me kill, for every time I chose violence when there might have been another way, for being someone you had to run from. Leonid, let me finish. He coughed, winced. I can't change what I am. The bratva, the business, the blood, it's part of me. But I can change how I use it, who I protect with it. I want to be the father Milo deserves, Claire. I want to be the man you deserved 3 years ago. She felt tears burning behind her eyes. That's not how this works. Yet you don't just become a different person because you want to. No, but I can try. His grip tightened. I'm offering you a choice. Real partnership. Equal say in how Milo grows up, equal authority in this family. Or I step back. keep you both safe from a distance, let you build the life you wanted before I ruined it. Claire looked at their joined hands, at this man who terrified her and protected her in equal measure, at the impossible situation they'd created together. I don't want you to step back, she said slowly, but I need you to understand something. Milo doesn't need a king. He needs a father who shows up to school plays and helps with homework and doesn't solve every problem with violence. I can do that. Can you? Really? She pulled her hand away. Because the second he disappoints you, and the second he doesn't want to be the heir you're imagining, he's already everything I could imagine. Leonid's voice cracked. He has your kindness, your strength. I don't want to make him into me, Claire. I want him to be better than me. The honesty in his voice did something to her carefully constructed walls. Partnership, she said finally. Equal authority. But you earn his love, Leonid. You don't demand it. You don't buy it. You show up and you prove that you're worth trusting. Deal. And no more executions in the office. I don't care how justified. I moved that to an off-site location 6 weeks ago. Despite everything, she almost laughed. Of course you did. They sat in silence for a moment, both of them battered and exhausted and somehow still alive. He called me Papa, Leonid said quietly. In the garden, before everything happened. First time he's used that word. He's starting to trust you. I won't waste that. He looked at her with those gray-green eyes that Milo had inherited. Either of you. Claire stood, squeezed his hand once more. Rest. I'll bring Milo in when you're stronger. Claire. She turned back. Thank you for keeping him safe all those years, for being strong enough to do it alone. I'm tired of being alone, she admitted. Then don't be. When she returned to the waiting room, Milo looked up with desperate hope. Is Papa okay? He's okay. He wants to see you. They walked back together, mother and son, toward a room where a dangerous man was learning to be a father, where broken pieces were starting impossibly to fit together into something that almost looked like family. And Milo climbed onto the hospital bed, carefully curling against Leonid's uninjured side. Leonid's arm came around him automatically, and Claire watched her son's breathing slow, watched the fear finally leave his small body. Mama? Milo's voice was drowsy. Are we going home? Claire looked at Leonid, who looked back at her with a question in his eyes.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
baby,
watching. Don't forget
she said
to like
softly.
the video and subscribe
We're going
for more
home.
stories like this. Your
And for the
support
first time in 3
truly
years,
means
she
a
meant
lot.
it.